Okay, in this video lecture, we're going to look at a little bit of in regards to rural and urbanization, the type of communities where people live. Now, in the 21st century, most people in the world live in an urban area. Pretty interesting stuff, pretty fascinating stuff. And we've looked at global population also is over 7 billion and projected to increase up to almost double that in the next 150 years. So where are those people going to go? They're going to go to cities, and we've seen that trend um, over time. People go to cities. People go to cities because that's where resources and opportunities can be found. And in the modern world, you need jobs and you need resources, and you also, may be attracted to the diversity of life, the diversity of human experience, which most often can be found only in a city. So here's some interesting data about trends in urbanization. And so what you're looking at is 1950, 2000, and then projected out to the year 2030. And you can see in the world that in 1950, about 29% of the world's population was living in an urban area. So, what is an urban area? Generally, a city or multiple cities, metropolitan area found together. Okay. There are official designations of that, but for the purposes of just this lecture, we're going to talk about urban areas as being larger cities where more densely populated areas. And we've looked at that in the U.S. Census video just a few videos back. In the year 2000 in the world, it was almost half. And you can see projected 2030, over half of people in the world are going to live in an urban area. Well, if you look at more developed regions, let me turn on my laser pointer. If you look at more developed regions, for example, the United States, now this is not the United States, but I can tell you that over 80% of people in the United States live in a city, live in urban areas. They don't live in small places like McLean County or Ohio County, which it's fine that people live there. Those are wonderful places. I'm quite partial to McLean County myself. But people, as we looked in the 2020 census in the state of Kentucky, rural areas have seen population decline in the last 10 years, and urban areas see population increases. And that's because, people are leaving rural areas and going to urban areas. So there's implications for that, for not only the urban areas, but the rural areas. You need population, you need a tax base to pay for services. And if people are leaving a community, what do you do to keep them? Do you want to keep them? Owensboro Davis County has struggled with this phenomenon. At the end of the day, you'll hear me talk about this in class periodically in the semester. You have two things in life. You have a family, whether you like it or not, good family or bad family. And you also have a community. We've talked about how does culture affect who we are and the decisions we make. Well, culture is found in community. What kind of community do you have? Do you care about your community? Are you involved in community affairs, civic affairs? We probably should. We should take care of what is around us because we live in that. That's the patch that we inhabit, so to speak, going back to Nicholas Christakis reference. Okay? So you can see the trends in all parts of the world, in all regions of the world. The trend is larger and larger and larger cities. Well, there's implications for that. So where are some of the larger cities in the world? You can see these are looking at 1950, 2000, and then 2015. This data is a little bit old. What I would like to draw your attention to is how these have changed a little bit over that time period. We used to see cities as wonderful places and the green light on the hill and opportunities, and that's where life is better and that sort of thing. But big city in the year 2021, 2022, in the 21st century, big city in global terms means something quite different. Okay. And we're going to look at that in a few minutes. I mean, just real quickly, we're going to look at Tokyo in a minute, but 36 million people, Owensboro Davis County is 100,000 in this urban area. Can you imagine living in a place with 36 million people? That's the size of some countries, right? And, what are communities supposed to provide? Fire safety, health safety, security, police. schools, public services such like water, sanitation, not to mention, jobs and opportunities and a place to live. When you have 36 million people, you rely on one another to kind of make that happen. You can't just, wait for the fire department to come and can't wait for the police department to come. You know, it's an interesting dynamic when you start talking about, again, population density as well. Some of these larger cities are also in the places that have the largest populations. So really, really big places. Okay. So we're going to move on from there. And what I like to do now is I like to do this with my classes. I'm going to pull up Google Maps and we're going to talk about a couple terms that are found in this chapter. The first term is megalopolis. And yes, that is an actual term. And it's found in the chapter here on population and urbanization. A megalopolis is a large city that's socially and economically, no, that's a metropolis. A megalopolis is a vast urban region containing a number of cities and their surrounding suburbs. So a vast region, and what we're going to do is we're going to look at a vast region in the United States from Washington, D.C., on up into the New York, Connecticut area, even up here to Boston. This area here is seen as a megalopolis in the United States, where you've got several metropolitan areas that overlap. Now, what's the significance of that? Well, again, how do communities take care of themselves? And is it my community's responsibility to take care of something that the other community is overlapping into? And so this is a new social organization phenomenon. So we've not seen this on the planet before. These vast urban areas, vast metropolitan areas. Based on the 2020 census, we know that a third of the US population lives on the eastern seaboard, from generally Boston down here to Charlotte, North Carolina area, down in here. Where is Charlotte? Right there. But this area right through here, about a third of the entire population of the United States lives there. So when a bomb cyclone hits, or when a hurricane hits, or when a massive snowstorm hits, it's a pretty big deal. You've got a third of the population living in that area. When a terrorist attack hits, these are highly populated, very densely populated areas, okay, where people live. So the reason why I pulled up a map is because when we look at development since World War II, and actually our current president, Joe Biden, and the Congress are looking at an infrastructure plan right now. When you look at development, city community development in the United States since World War II, you had to look at roads, okay? You don't get around in a community without roads because people drive cars. Now, why do we have cars and why do we have roads is a whole nother lecture. It's got something to do with the automobile and the tire manufacturing industries. But anyway, so these yellow lines here are roads, and you can see the number of roads in a major metropolitan area. This is 495. This is the Belt Line, the Beltway in DC, how you get all the way around the metropolitan area. Now, I'm going to show you something about this in a few minutes, so we're going to come back to it. But, traffic patterns and roads are quite important for the development of a community. Well, in the case of Washington, you go not too far out of Washington, just to the northeast, and you run into Baltimore. Okay, so there's Baltimore right there. You see that. And, it too, when you look at development and roads and the design of cities and communities in the United States, you have a lot of similarity from the Mississippi River east. It's got a lot of English heritage, English German heritage. And I'm going to show you some examples of where community design is different in other parts of the United States in just a few minutes. Okay. So you get out of Baltimore, not too far to the northeast, along the I-95 corridor. If you ever watch Pardon the Interruption on ESPN with Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon, they talk a lot about the I-95 corridor. And he's talking about these major urban areas, right? So here you have Wilmington, and then you get not too far out and you're into Philadelphia. And it seems like we skipped over, oh, New York is right here, I'm sorry. And then you get into New York City, one of the largest cities in the world. And you get too far up in the Northeast, you get into Hartford, Connecticut. And then not too far along, you get into Boston, okay? And even Boston has at least a semicircle of a beltline here. So that's a megalopolis, okay? About 120 million people live in these areas along the eastern seaboard. Okay, well, I mentioned the Beltline, and in recent news in Owensboro-Davis County, there's been talk about an outer loop, and there's been some politics around an outer loop, whereas the outer loop would be established out here. This must be where I work. Yeah, that's Owensboro Community Technical College. So this is the Beltline here. Notice we don't have one up here. Now, what might Owensboro-Davis County look like in the future? Well, let me show you an example of Louisville and Cincinnati. We're going to go up the way here. This is Louisville. And again, another Beltline. Very similar road structure, road design, community, city design, urban design. Very, very similar. Cincinnati, you see a very similar design as well. 275 goes all the way around southern Ohio into northern Kentucky. Major metropolitan area there. Another way of looking at Owensboro is if you went to the future of what Owensboro might look like is St. Louis. Some of you may be familiar with St. Louis. If you take St. Louis and turn it over, I guess this way or this way, depending on how you want to do it, where the river is in the north, I guess maybe I can do that. How do I do that? Let me see. Not sure I can. I can't really do that. I can do it on my phone, but I can't do it here. But, this is like the Beltline, the bypass in Owensboro. But even this one goes all the way around and encapsulates St. Louis to where you have Edwardsville over here and you have Southern Illinois over here. Okay. Now, why do I talk about some of that? Again, because development, community development. Communities have to develop. If they don't develop, the people will leave. People move other places. And if you don't have a community, what do you got? That's where your work is, your opportunities, your lifestyle, what you do. Now, can you envision a metropolitan area? Let me draw. I don't have my laser pointer, but between Henderson, Evansville, and Owensboro, right there. So, the last 10 to 15 years, we've seen quite a bit of growth and development of Newburgh out this way. There's projected a new bridge to be built from Evansville, bypassing Henderson this way. We know a lot of development occurs along new roads. Hey, it's a possibility. So that's what we call an edge city, where you have, and you see this out on 54, which is actually this right here. Where you see roads is where you see growth and development. Here is out on South Frederica, where you've got the bypass. The stuff that's out here beyond the bypass wasn't here until the bypass was built. Okay, so those are some key terms and definitions in looking at population and urbanization, in particular urbanization. And hopefully this kind of ties in a little bit to what we looked at with global population and what we looked at with the population in the United States, Kentucky, and Davis County, and population density, and all those kinds of things. So we're going to wrap up that chapter there, I believe. And thanks for your attention.